Hey guys, Bido here to tell you about the latest from Born of Osiris, Through Shadows, out July 11th on Sumerian Records. The album has 13 tracks, 50 minutes in length, and this is the band's 7th full-length studio album. They are an American progressive metalcore band. When it comes to the design of this record, the album doesn't hit the mark as far as an overall record is concerned, at least from my standpoint, from my perspective. It's an album that at first glance, at least as it starts, it feels very dynamic and very fluid. But the overall length of the record allows the album to dilute itself, and it becomes quite repetitive as you progress. There's a lot of commonalities within the sound, within the song structures, that you almost start to see as patterns repeating as the album moves along. Having this length, considering the sound, considering the execution of the tracks, to me they go against one another. Had the album been a little bit more concise, a little bit shorter, you can get away with some of that repetition without necessarily hurting the overall album experience. As far as the sound goes, I mentioned already some of the commonalities of this record in terms of being there and being there consistently throughout the album. I think definitely one of those commonalities are the synths. I like the synths on this record because while they're a common ground and a common denominator throughout each and every single song, they don't offer one standard approach and they don't offer one standard outcome. They offer consistency of presence, but that's it. As far as everything else, I love how much they add to the texture of the songs, to the atmosphere of the songs, and almost creating a little bit of a sci-fi experience at time in terms of how the sound integrates with everything else around it. So it's a consistent element that doesn't offer a consistent end result, and I think that is a great way of including the synths on an album like this, adding to also to the progressive side of the band through the synths, not only depending on the guitar sound for it, gives the album more than just one dimension. Now, once you get to the guitars, to me here, there's where the problem lies as far as the overall sound experience on this record. On one hand, you have the more progressive sound that changes, that creates ripples, that throws you some curveballs. The technical progressive sound from the guitars on this album is really interesting, and it always comes to the surface. It always rises to the top, and it helps give size to the songs. It helps give the songs a little bit more for the listener to chew on, for the listener to digest, and it definitely helps define individualities within the tracks or individual moments within the tracks. The issue is on the bottom end of the guitar sound when it comes to the heaviness, when it comes to the tonality of the guitars within that heaviness, within that chunkiness, within that more gent environment that the album offers. The sense of linearity that exists there is so apparent, and it really becomes the sole focus of everything that you listen to. Because once you look at this album from a guitar standpoint, you start to see water, but all of the water is coming from the same well, so there's not a lot of difference between it. And when your ears get attached to it after 3, 4, 5 songs, by the time you get to 8, 9, 10, 11, bottom end of the record, you start to feel like you've heard that song before, even though you haven't, just because the bass line of the song, the main spinal cord of the track, as far as that chugginess, as far as that heaviness, as far as that guitar tonality is concerned, really sounds the same throughout the entire album. This hurts the experience of the record. This hurts the album overall. It takes nothing away from the quality of the individual songs, but on an album, like I mentioned earlier, with 13 songs, 50 minutes, it becomes a little bit cumbersome. It becomes repetitive, and that's not something you want on any album. And it doesn't matter how much progressive elements you add. Doesn't matter if you add a saxophone here or there. It doesn't matter if you add these more technical pockets, these more jarring pockets. It honestly, all of that really becomes window dressing at one point or another, because your ears, the more you listen to this record, the more they gravitate to what is common throughout the entire album, minimizing the differences. And I think the overall length of the album makes this problem even more glaring. Now, once you get into the vocal performance, I thought the vocals on the album were excellent. Very engaging, very dynamic, really helping define the album, define the moments within the album, from the cleaner vocals to the harsh vocals to the backing vocals to the choirs. There's a lot to digest from a vocal standpoint, and I think that's one of the elements that at times saves the record, that at times saves the songs, because it definitely helps define individuality within these tracks and really helps you try to, at the very least, see the forest from the trees in an album that's nearly impossible to do so, and that takes away from the record and doesn't allow the album to be as good as it could have been. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with The War That You Are, a track that has great synth sound, really punchy guitars. The chorus is excellent on this track. Heavy, melodic, dark. The vocal layers are also excellent. The verses are a little bit more heavy hitting with that chugginess that this album has a lot to offer, but the song doesn't feel repetitive because it has dynamic moments within it. It has a lot of volume, it has a lot of layers, it's very rich from that standpoint. The synths really help with a more melodic side, with a more electronic sci-fi side of the track, if you will. And it's a very complete song because of everything that it has, the way the vocals cooperate with the track, the different momentums of the song, shifting from verses to chorus in an excellent way, in a very memorable chorus, both musically and vocally. Very complete track all around. Then you have Inverno, heavy song, and the vocals really add to that overall heaviness that this track has. It's a very aggressive and intense track. The synths bring in an interesting element into the forefront, adding to the guitars, to the more dynamic movement that the guitars have, but always with that very well-defined backdrop of consistency there. Now, the overall heaviness of the song is definitely something that comes up to the surface. The song has different momentums, but when you get to the end of the track, I think what's going to stand out as far as this song is concerned is how heavy the overall track is. I love the choirs on the back end of this track. They add some darkness to the song that was kind of lingering through that heaviness, but it's never as well defined as it becomes once those choirs hit. They're really somber, but at the same time really creating a sense of individuality in the track and in the overall vocal performance as well. Last but definitely not least, Dark Fable, super consistent guitar sound, interlaced that consistency with some progressive elements, some synthwave elements that add melody as well. This is a very volatile track. There is life, there is energy in this song. It's not a very dark track at all. It's a track that has a lot of moments of melody. There is some darkness in that melody, but it's not an overall dark feeling song. And I think the main reason why the song doesn't feel overly dark is because of how dynamic and how jolting it is. I mean, this track is pulling you in 1,000 different directions almost constantly, and I think that's one of the things that stands out about this track is the volatility, the controlled chaos that exists within the song structure and within the execution of the track itself. This is it, Born of Osiris Through Shadows, out July 11th on Sumerian Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band. Hit me up in the comment section. I'll see you all at the next video. Take care, guys.